What's up, comic and pop culture fans? This is James with Minhunter Comics, and today we're doing a list of TV and movie adaptations from comics and graphic novels that actually exceeded the source material. I think we all know that sometimes these adaptations usually aren't as good. Not all the time. So we're going to go ahead and rank the stuff that was better, the stuff that was about the same, and the stuff that's pretty obviously worse, just for fun. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, consider joining. It's the price of coffee a month. You get to see videos a day early, and it really helps me do stuff like this full time. Quick plug, I am coming from the shop. Guys, come visit me if you happen to be in the relative close by area. It's worth your time. I got some awesome stuff here, but it's not just comics. The comics is only a tiny percent of the store. We got vinyls, we got this, we got that. Bring the wife, bring the kids. Everyone can have a blast here. We'd love to have you. What I'm going to do is, as long as you get one item from any other vendor, I'm going to do 30% off any book $5 or under, which you guys have seen me price books. That's the vast majority of the shop. Why don't we start with Dark Knight Rises? I like this entry because I think a lot of people don't know that it's an adaptation. It actually adapts not only No Man's Land, the famous one where they blow the bridges and they leave Gotham to be, but it also adapts a little bit of Nightfall, where Bane breaks his back, he has to train and come back to win the mantle back. I put these right about the same. I'm a Nightfall fanboy, so obviously I'm going to love that stuff. I love No Man's Land, and while the movie is exceptional, I do think it is a match to the source material, all while changing quite a many things. Thor, Love and Thunder. A lot of these Thor plot lines, like Ragnarok, but also the Gore the God Butcher stuff, are heavily in our minds when we talk about Thor comics. Now, Thor God of Thunder, the run in which we saw Gore the God Butcher, is an amazing run and possibly the best Thor run we've ever got. Really high bar. I hated Thor Love and Thunder. It is possibly my least favorite MCU movie. But it ain't just me. A lot of people think this movie was a fail, and it's very clear that Christian Bale's talents were completely misused in this movie. Death of Stalin. This was one that I saw the movie first, so I had a little bit of bias, but I actually really loved the 2010 graphic novel. It's really good. If you haven't read it, it's not on a lot of people's radar. I would do both. Watch the movie, read the comics, good stuff all around. I think that it was a match to the source material. Killing Joke, the animated movie, fell short of the comic book adaptation. I'm one of those dudes that thinks this is the ultimate Batman one-shot ever written. Probably the best one-and-done story we've ever seen. The formation of Oracle, everything between the Batman and Joker, nailing it out of the park. I thought that the movie really missed some stuff, and the Batgirl romance stuff really didn't work for me. And I know a lot of people agree. Kingsman, The Secret Service. This is another one on the list that I think people might have not known about the comics. What a way to make it this weird, funny James Bond espionage thing, completely change some characters, and make it so palatable for the average moviegoer that completely buries the fact that it's a comic is actually one of the strengths. This is a movie I've loved so much I've seen quite a few times before I even found out it was a comic. So I think that's saying something for sure. I liked it a lot better than the source material. I'm going to put Young Justice on here, the TV show. Much of Young Justice, kind of like X-Men, the animated series, and X-Men 97, is an adaptation of many famous plot lines in the comics. And I think they not only do them justice, there are some improvements, but the original source material is so strong that I feel that they belong in the same category. You guys can debate that down below. Let's go ahead with Logan. Logan, I think, is one of the ones that famously adapts the comic book equivalent a little bit better than even the source material. And I think a lot of people like Old Man Logan, but there's no denying that Logan was a major win for not just movies, but critically as well. This is one of the ones on the list that's more of a loose adaptation of Old Man Logan, but it is nonetheless one that did exceed the source material. How about Scott Pilgrim versus the World? Indie classic here, Scott Pilgrim. Comics are great. Big cult following. I love the movie, though. And I think they If this were entirely my opinion, I would say it's even better. But I have to respect the cult following for the comics, and I'm going to say that they land around the same. If you haven't seen Scott Pilgrim versus the World, do yourself a favor. It's one of the funnest movies that I know. One of the greatest adaptations I've ever seen. Next is going to be Batman versus Superman, which is largely a version of the Death of Superman comics. Only I despise that movie. You guys don't even want to hear me rant. I could go on for an hour about how much I don't like Batman versus Superman. Seriously, there's not enough time. And while I think the director's cut is a massive improvement, it's kind of like polishing a turd in my eyes. It is by far a much worse adaptation. Don't even get me started on Doomsday. Invincible. Now, Invincible has an amazing comic series, but I do think the Invincible comics move too fast, especially after watching the show. I really wanted to slow the comics down. I just thought they went from story to story to story so fast, and the character development was feeling really rushed in the comics, whereas in the show, especially an animated show, you can take your time and really flesh it out. And I think they succeeded in every single category. It might be the most highest rated animated show still. It's amazing. If you haven't read Invincible, please do that. But if you haven't watched Invincible, please do that even more. We've got a DC entry here in the animated category of Injustice. Now, I feel like it's right here. Yeah, bookmarked and everything. I love Injustice, especially the first half of Injustice. I don't think the ending is my favorite, but that's okay. I love the comics. Tom Taylor for the win. The show or the movies didn't land. They also left out so many characters. Now, one of the things that made the comics so good is they literally used every single DC character, great and small, at some point in the comics seamlessly. The movie didn't do that. And it got a couple other things wrong, but I feel like it was a step in the wrong direction. How about Kick-Ass? This is another Mark Millar, or Miller, whatever you want to say his name is. Kick-Ass, the comics are fun, but a little bit drier compared to the show. I really appreciate how much they put some charm into these characters in the show that resonated with us far more than the comics did. The comics are still great. It's just that the movies are even more fun. I'm going to go with Batman the Animated Series. Now, the animated series is not a direct copy of really anything in the comics, but it did improve many characters. It introduced Harley Quinn. It greatly added depth to Mr. Freeze. It greatly added depth to the Riddler. Let's not forget those famous Two-Face episodes. It felt that the BTAS stuff couldn't be stopped when it was coming out. Everything was seemingly an improvement. So I put that under the list of things that was better than the comics, and I'm sticking with it. Batman Returns. I'm talking about the DC animated movie. Now, Batman Returns by Frank Miller is hailed by some, not me, but hailed by some to be the best, if not top 5 for sure, Batman graphic novels ever written. I understand the argument, totally get it. For me, I always had a problem with Frank Miller art even then when it was frankly much better than it is now. So if you want that story, but you don't want to get bogged down in Frank Miller art, this adaptation was pretty faithful. And I really like the animated style that they did for the movie. It actually was a really smooth watch. I thought it was better. Most people think it's the same, so I'm going to leave it in the same category. Let's go animated with Under the Red Hood. Now, I really like the comic book Return and Resurrection of Jason Todd. I think it's great. Some people aren't in love with how he returned, with the source wall being punched by Superboy Prime and the fabric of reality zoots him back into existence. Yeah, whatever. I like the animated Ra's al Ghul, Lazarus Pit origin and return a lot better, and I think most people agree. I even like the source material, but it took everything about it and made it better and a little bit more palatable. It's also one of the most recommended DC animated watches. Next is Jupiter's Legacy. This is one where Mark Millar, or Mark Miller, however you want to pronounce it, I always thought it was Millar, has so many great comics. I think his source material can't be beat, and when they adapted it to TV, it had an uphill battle. We actually only got a couple episodes in, me and the wife. I thought it was actually pretty rough. So I'm definitely going to say that this was a worse adaptation. The comics are the clear winner on this one. How about Road to Perdition? This Tom Hanks classic right here is a match, I believe, to the comics. Renowned series, award-winning stuff, and the movie has a special place in my heart, too. I think I enjoyed the movie more, but I think a lot of people would agree that it is a match to the source material, so we're going to put them in the same camp. Let's talk about Sin City, the original movie. I actually haven't seen the second movie. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad. Let's just stick with the main stuff. This is another Frank Miller entry on the list, and it's another one that's very renowned and an amazing work of art. But the thing is, the movie also is an amazing work of art, and Frank Miller was involved with the movie. Might be why it's such a good match. Sin City is an absolute treat in both book and movie form, one that I do revisit quite a bit. Next up is The Boys. Now, when you're reading The Boys comics, there are great, strong moments. There are also things that fall pretty flat, and the pacing moves a little too quickly, whereas the show dives into each character. It's this now modern cult classic that's actually still going on. Everybody hails this as like one of the best Amazon originals out there. It's hard to have a list talking about adaptations better than the comics without mentioning The Boys, and I'm going to hard agree with that. How about New Mutants? This is a movie that should have worked because I feel like Jonah Hex, it had an amazing cast. I do think Ilyana Rasputin is still a major, great part of the movie, but there are so many missteps in the movie. Nobody seemed to watch it either. It was not a commercial success or a critical success in any way. And a lot of people, I think, don't know it exists, which is probably a fail in its own right. Maybe it was too hard to adapt. I don't know. But I think they missed the ball on this one. We're going to talk about Riverdale. This is a TV show. Once again, another entry from the wife here. I was making this list and I kind of would have glossed over that, but she said, oh, do Riverdale. Now, she liked it more than most people. I had to do some research here. Riverdale was a bit of a miss with the Archie crowd. The Archie comics are still so fun. Every single issue that you pick up is going to be a fun, joyful read. Whereas Riverdale missed the tone and got some things wrong with the characters. Next up, we're going to go Watchmen. This is a tricky entry because it is not an adaptation at all to the comics. It is a direct sequel, and there was never supposed to be a sequel if you're listening to Alan Moore. But it's a sequel to the Watchmen graphic novel, which is one of the best graphic novels of all time. So to have a show match it, it had to be a masterpiece. And I actually do think the HBO Watchmen was a masterpiece. I tell people all the time to see it. It picks up years later, after the events of the squid attack in New York. It is amazing. If you haven't watched it, please do yourself a favor. I've watched it a few times. My wife loves it. Amazing show. Really tall order to come up against the source material, but I think they succeeded. We're going to talk about Blade. This was an improvement in every single way. Blade is cool in the comics, but trust me when I say that they made major improvements. The Daywalker stuff, having it be gritty, the great casting, everything was better than the comics. And now Blade in the comics is sort of more of an adaptation of the movie. It's done a complete switch, but it's almost a different character if you're familiar with the 70s comics stuff. The Blade series always has a special place in my heart, and it rose to the challenge and far exceeded. Next is Jonah Hex. A lot of people forget this one even got made. Everything should have worked with this. The director liked the source material, really well cast, but it's one of those ones that just didn't work, man. It just didn't land. So Jonah Hex, I think it's sitting nicely at like a less than 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, where those who know Jonah Hex really dig that stuff. And I think they were even offended by how rough the movie was. So we're definitely going to say that that's worse. Next is Steel. Remember when Shaq became John Henry Irons' Steel? First of all, pretty crazy that we got a Steel movie at all, but it was the 90s. and they were getting pretty experimental with who was getting a movie then. Well, this movie is hilariously bad, but it's almost so bad that it becomes good, but not quite. Definitely one that's worse than the comic book adaptation. I think a lot of people try to forget that this even happened. Next up is WandaVision, which I still think is the best Marvel show we've seen. It's funny, it was the first and possibly the best. This is an adaptation of the Tom King Vision series, as well as House of M. A couple other plot lines as well. And it is, like some others, a loose adaptation. I thought they improved on some things, but I also thought that you kind of can't beat the original Vision series from Tom King. It's so good. So I was glad they took a swing at it, and I think this was a major success that rivaled the comics. Why don't we do Infinity Gauntlet? Now, while there's a lot of differences, the same idea is there. I actually prefer Thanos being a giant simp rather than some dude who's talking about making sure the universe gets nicely cut in half. I actually think we still could get some explanation that it wasn't so noble of him and his warped ideas, and that he really was just simping for Lady Death, like in the comics. Regardless, Infinity Gauntlet's a major part of my youth. I thought it was amazing. Most people agree, and the movies are obviously great, so I put them kind of in the same bucket. One of the ones that I think was worse is going to be Y the Last Man, hailed as one of the greatest independent running series of all time. It is a treat to read, tear-jerking at the end and everything, and the entire soul of this thing pretty much got missed when they made a show. It should have been an easy layup, it just wasn't, and we're left with a worse adaptation that leaves you thinking that you should just keep the comics. How about Umbrella Academy? This is another one of those award-winning comics that had a tall order having a show possibly try to beat it, and I think they did. Umbrella Academy is actually my wife's favorite adaptation, I believe. She's the one who got me into it, and I gotta thank her because that was a real treat getting into it. And I was a reader of Umbrella Academy, so I had high standards, and I thought they nailed it. Let's go with Men in Black, one of the entries on the list that a lot of people didn't even know was an adaptation. That's because it was a very independent publisher, not a lot of sales, and not a lot of similarities either. They basically improved every single element of the comics to make this now cult classic movie, and it's one that's pretty well known as one that ended up being a bit better. Guys, drop down below. What's an adaptation you think was so hilariously worse than the original source material? What do you think is one that was a match? And do you have any more entries that you think were actually better than the comics? Let me know down below. Let's do a little debating, and I'll see you at the next video. Keep on hunting. Make sure to come on down to Sentiment Depot's Antiques and Collectibles, located at 238 West Delaware Ave in Pennington, New Jersey. Find so many great books for just $1 and the lowest prices on key comics around. Enjoy a huge selection of graded comics priced up to 20% lower than current fair market value. We are open from Wednesday to Sunday, closed Monday, Tuesday. You got a collection you want to sell? Bring that too. Can't wait to see you there.